I never thought I'd be turning to the internet for advice, but here I am. My family situation has always been complicated, but recent events have pushed me to my limits. I'll try to give you the full picture, so bear with me, it's a long story. I was born in a small town in the Midwest, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business. My mom, Jane, 52F, was 28 when she got pregnant with me. She was working as a teacher at the local elementary school and had been dating my dad, Mark, 54M, for about 6 months. He was new in town, having just started a job as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company. When my mom found out she was pregnant, she was terrified. Not only were they not married, but they hadn't even been together that long. In our conservative town, this was scandalous. My grandparents on both sides were furious, especially my mom's Catholic parents. They'd always been strict. My mom wasn't even allowed to date in high school. Finding out their unmarried daughter was pregnant was their worst nightmare come true. The pressure on my parents to get married was intense. My maternal grandparents threatened to disown my mom if she didn't make things right. My paternal grandparents, while less openly hostile, made it clear they expected my dad to step up and be a man. My parents, caught in the middle of this storm, felt they had no choice. They had a hasty wedding when my mom was 5 months pregnant. I've seen pictures, my mom in a loose white dress that barely hit her bump, my dad looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. No one is smiling in any of the photos. It wasn't a celebration, it was a grudging concession to social expectations. From what my mom has told me, things were tense from the start. My dad resented being forced into marriage. He'd been enjoying his bachelor life and wasn't ready to settle down. My mom, meanwhile, felt hurt by his obvious reluctance. She'd hoped that once they were married, he'd embrace the idea of being a family. But that's not what happened. I was born 4 months after the wedding. My mom says those first few months were a blur of sleepless nights and constant arguing. My dad worked long hours and traveled frequently for his job. When he was home, he'd go out drinking with his coworkers, leaving my mom alone with me. She was struggling to balance motherhood, her job, she'd gone back to teaching part-time, and her deteriorating marriage. One of my earliest memories is of my parents fighting. I must have been about 3. I remember hiding in my closet, hands over my ears, as their shouts echoed through our small house. It became a familiar scene as I grew older. When I was 4, everything fell apart. My mom had been suspicious for a while that my dad was cheating. He'd been coming home late, being secretive with his phone, and picking fights over little things. One day, she decided to surprise him at work with lunch. Instead, she found him in his office with his coworker, Sarah, 48F, in a very compromising position. My mom was devastated. She begged my dad to end the affair and work on their marriage. She even suggested couples counseling. But my dad refused. He said he was in love with Sarah and wanted a divorce. He'd been having an affair with her for over a year, almost since she'd started at the company. What happened next was ugly. My dad moved out that same day, going to stay with Sarah. A week later, he came back while my mom was at work and cleared out their joint bank account. He took everything, leaving my mom and me with nothing. We couldn't afford the rent on our house anymore and had to move in with my maternal grandparents. My mom fell into a deep depression. She had to quit her job because she couldn't handle working and taking care of me. We lived off my grandparents' charity for almost a year before my mom got back on her feet. She found a job as a dental receptionist. It paid less than teaching, but had more flexible hours so she could take care of me. As I grew older, I started to notice my mom's attitude towards me changing. She'd make offhand comments about how different her life would be if she hadn't gotten pregnant so young. She'd sigh heavily whenever she had to buy me new clothes or school supplies. Once, after a few glasses of wine, she told me that I'd ruined her chances at a good life. I began to feel like a burden, an unwanted reminder of my mom's failed marriage. I threw myself into my studies, desperate for any kind of praise or approval. But nothing was ever good enough. If I got all A's, she'd ask why they weren't A+. If I won an award at school, she'd say I should have won a bigger one. It was exhausting and demoralizing. Meanwhile, my dad was completely absent. He never called, never visited, never paid child support. It was like I didn't exist to him. As I got older and social media became a thing, I'd sometimes see pictures of him with Sarah and their kids, my half-siblings. They looked like the perfect happy family. It hurt more than I can express to see him being the father to them that he never was to me. My teenage years were particularly tough. My mom's bitterness had calcified into constant criticism and emotional manipulation. If I wanted to go out with friends, she'd guilt me about leaving her alone. If I expressed any ambition or dreams for the future, she'd make cutting remarks about how I'd probably end up pregnant and alone like her. I developed severe anxiety and depression. I had trouble making friends because I was always worried about saying or doing the wrong thing. I had my first panic attack at 15, in the middle of a math test. The school called my mom, but she was angry about having to leave work early to pick me up. She told me I was being overdramatic and needed to toughen up. Despite all this, I managed to maintain good grades. School became my escape. I'd stay late in the library, volunteering for every extracurricular activity I could, anything to avoid going home. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Thompson, noticed how much time I was spending at school and took me under her wing. She encouraged me to apply to colleges, helped me with my essays, and even drove me to my SAT exam when my mom refused to take me. When I got accepted to a university across the country on a partial scholarship, it felt like a lifeline. My mom's reaction was mixed. She oscillated between being proud that I'd gotten into a good school and being resentful that I was abandoning her. The day I left for college was tense. She barely spoke to me as we packed up the car, and her goodbye at the airport was cold and perfunctory. College was a revelation. For the first time, I was free from the oppressive atmosphere of home. I made friends, joined clubs, and started to discover who I was outside of my mother's narrow expectations. I began seeing a therapist through the Student Health Center, which helped me start processing years of emotional abuse and neglect. After graduation, I got an entry-level job at a tech startup in the city where I went to college. The pay isn't great, but it's enough to rent a tiny studio apartment and support myself. I'm proud of how far I've come, considering where I started. I maintain minimal contact with my mom. We talk on the phone maybe once a month, and I visit at Christmas. It's stilted and awkward, but it's the best I can manage for my mental health. I hadn't heard from my dad in 20 years. Then, out of the blue last week, I got a Facebook message from him. He said he wanted to meet up and talk. I was shocked and suspicious, but curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to meet him for coffee. When we met, I barely recognized him. He's gained weight and gone gray. He seemed nervous and wouldn't look me in the eye. After some awkward small talk, he dropped a bombshell. Sarah died of cancer 2 years ago, leaving him a single dad to their 8-year-old son, my half-brother Tommy. Apparently, being a single dad is cramping his dating life. He said women his age don't want to date a man with a young child. So he had a brilliant solution. He wanted me to adopt Tommy so he could be free to date again. I was speechless. This man, who abandoned me without a second thought, now wanted me to take responsibility for his other child. The audacity was staggering. I told him absolutely not and left the cafe. But that wasn't the end of it. He's been blowing up my phone with calls and texts, alternating between guilt-tripping me and offering bribes. He even showed up at my apartment. How he got my address, I don't know. I blocked his number, but now he's enlisted my mom to pressure me. She keeps calling, saying I should do the right thing and take in my half-brother. She says it's my chance to have the loving sibling relationship I never had growing up. I'm furious that she's taking his side after everything he put us through. But a small part of me feels guilty. Am I being selfish? Should I consider adopting Tommy? I'm only 24, I can barely support myself. I'm not ready to be responsible for a child. What should I do? How do I get my parents to back off and respect my decision? Update 1. Thank you all for your supportive comments and messages. I was overwhelmed by the response and it took me a while to process everything. I appreciate the validation that I'm not being selfish or unreasonable. Many of you suggested I talk to my mom and explain how her pressure is affecting me. I took that advice and called her yesterday. It didn't go well. I tried to calmly explain that I'm not in a position to take on a child, financially or emotionally. I reminded her of how hard things were for us when I was growing up, and said I didn't want to put a child through that struggle. My mom exploded. She accused me of being heartless and selfish, just like my dad. She said I was abandoning my brother just like my dad abandoned me. Then she hit below the belt. She said this is why I'm single, because I'm too selfish to think of anyone but myself. I lost my cool at that point. I told her she had no right to judge me after the way she treated me growing up. I brought up specific incidents, like the time she forgot to pick me up from school because she was too hungover, or when she told me I'd ruined her life at my high school graduation party. She tried to deflect, saying I was exaggerating and that she'd done the best she could as a single mother. I pointed out that she chose to stay single. There were men who were interested in her over the years, but she always pushed them away, saying she couldn't trust anyone after what my dad did. I told her it wasn't fair to put all that emotional baggage on me, to make me responsible for her happiness. She hung up on me mid-sentence. An hour later, I got a series of texts from her. She said she's done with me and I'm no longer welcome in her life unless I agree to take Tommy. She said she always knew I'd turn out to be a disappointment, just like my dad. I'm not going to lie, her words hurt. A lot. Even though I know intellectually that she's being unfair and manipulative, emotionally it still feels like a knife to the heart. I've been fighting back tears all day. To make matters worse, my dad has ramped up his harassment campaign. He's been leaving voicemails. I have him blocked, but they go to my visual voicemail, alternating between raging at me and pleading with me to save Tommy from foster care. In his latest message, he threatened to tell my boss and co-workers what a heartless person I am if I don't agree to take Tommy. I'm worried he'll follow through and it could affect my job. I work for a small startup and we all know each other pretty well. If my dad starts spreading rumors, it could make my work environment really uncomfortable. I'm seriously considering changing my phone number and moving to get away from all this. But I'm worried that's too extreme. Am I overreacting? Should I try to reason with them one more time? I'm also concerned about Tommy in all this. It's clear my dad is not a fit parent, but I'm not equipped to take him in. Several of you suggested I contact CPS. I'm considering it, but I'm scared of the fallout. What if they investigate and decide Tommy is fine with my dad? Then I'll have caused more drama for nothing. Plus, there's a part of me that feels guilty about potentially breaking up a family. I know how much it hurt me to grow up without a dad. Am I doing the same thing to Tommy if I report my dad to CPS? But then I think about how my dad is treating him, using him as a bargaining chip, threatening to put him in foster care, and I wonder if he'd be better off away from my dad. I feel like I'm back to being that scared little girl, trying to manage my parents' emotions and walking on eggshells. I thought I'd left that behind when I moved away for college. How do I set boundaries and stick to them without feeling crushing guilt? My therapist is on vacation this week, so I can't even process this with her. I've been trying to use the coping mechanisms she's taught me, deep breathing, journaling, going for walks, but it's hard to quiet the anxious thoughts swirling in my head. I keep second-guessing myself. Maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I should just take Tommy in. But then I think about how unprepared I am to be a parent. I can barely take care of myself some days. How could I possibly be responsible for a child? And what about my own dreams and goals? I've been saving up to go back to school for my master's degree. If I take in Tommy, that would have to be put on hold indefinitely. Is it wrong of me to prioritize my own future over his? I'm sorry for rambling. I guess I'm just looking for reassurance that I'm not a terrible person for saying no. How do I stand firm in my decision without completely destroying my relationship with my family? Is that even possible at this point? Update 2. Things have escalated quickly in the past few days. I took the advice many of you gave and decided to contact Child Protective Services about the situation with Tommy. I figured they were best equipped to investigate and determine if he was in a safe environment. I called their hotline and explained everything: my dad's absence from my life, his sudden reappearance, his request for me to adopt Tommy, and his erratic behavior when I refused. I also mentioned the voicemail where Tommy said my dad wasn't nice to him, which had really concerned me. The CPS worker took all the information and said they would look into it. I felt relieved to have it off my chest, but also anxious about what would happen next. I didn't have to wait long to find out. Yesterday morning, I got a hysterical call from my dad. He was screaming that CPS had shown up at his house and interviewed Tommy. Apparently, Tommy told them about some things that raised red flags, because they decided to temporarily remove him from my dad's custody while they investigate further. My dad is blaming me entirely for this. He called me every name in the book and said I've ruined his life. He threatened to make me pay for what I've done. I'm not sure what he means by that, but it's scary. I also got a call from my mom. To my shock, she was furious with me too. She said I had no right to call CPS, that family problems should be handled within the family. She thinks I should have agreed to take Tommy instead of betraying my dad to the authorities. I tried to explain that I was just looking out for Tommy's welfare, but she wouldn't listen. She said I'm dead to her now and she never wants to speak to me again. Then she hung up. I'm reeling from all of this. On one hand, I feel like I did the right thing by reporting my concerns to CPS. If Tommy was in an unsafe situation, he needs to be protected. But on the other hand, I feel horrible for potentially breaking up a family. What if I overreacted? What if Tommy ends up in a worse situation in foster care? I'm also terrified about my dad's threats of retaliation. I don't know what he's capable of. Should I be worried about my safety? Should I tell my boss what's going on in case my dad tries to contact my workplace? I feel like I've opened Pandora's box and I don't know how to deal with the fallout. Any advice on how to proceed from here would be greatly appreciated. Update 3. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks since my last update. I want to thank everyone again for their support and advice throughout this ordeal. It's meant more than I can express. First, the situation with Tommy. CPS completed their investigation. They found evidence of neglect and possible emotional abuse in my dad's home. As a result, they've placed Tommy with his maternal grandparents, Sarah's parents, for now. I'm relieved he's with family who can care for him properly. My dad's reaction has been explosive. He left me a barrage of voicemails, each more unhinged than the last. In the most recent one, he threatened to expose all my secrets to my employer and on social media. I'm not sure what secrets he thinks I have, considering he hasn't been in my life for 20 years, but it's still unsettling. I took the advice many of you gave and spoke to my boss about the situation. I explained that I have an estranged father who's been harassing me and might try to contact the company. My boss was understanding and said they'd alert security to be on the lookout for any troublemakers. As for my mom, she's still not speaking to me. She did send one text saying she hopes I'm happy with what I've done to this family. I haven't responded. At this point, I think some distance from her is probably for the best. I've been struggling with a lot of conflicting emotions. Guilt over breaking up my dad's family, relief that Tommy is safe, anger at my parents for putting me in this position, sadness over likely losing any chance at a relationship with my half-brother. It's been overwhelming at times. But I'm trying to focus on the positives. I stood up for myself and didn't let my parents manipulate me into a situation I wasn't prepared for. I potentially helped get Tommy out of an unsafe environment. And I've realized I'm stronger than I thought I was. I've decided to take some concrete steps to protect myself going forward. I'm changing my phone number this week. I'm also planning to move when my lease is up in a few months, just to be safe. It feels a bit extreme, but I think a fresh start would do me good. My therapist has been incredibly helpful in processing all of this. She's helping me work through my guilt and reinforcing that I made the right decision. We're also focusing on setting healthy boundaries and building my self-esteem. One unexpected positive outcome of all this is that I've reconnected with my maternal grandmother. She reached out after hearing about the situation from my mom, who, of course, painted me as the villain. But when I explained my side of the story, my grandmother was surprisingly supportive. She apologized for not being there for me more when I was growing up and for letting my mom treat me the way she did. We've been talking regularly, and it's nice to have some family in my corner. As for Tommy, I'm still processing my feelings about him. Part of me wants to reach out, to try to build some kind of relationship with my half-brother. But I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do right now. His world has been turned upside down, and I don't want to complicate things further. I'm considering writing him a letter that his grandparents can give him when he's older, explaining who I am and why I made the decisions I did. But for now, I think it's best to give him space to adjust to his new situation. Work has been a welcome distraction through all of this. I've thrown myself into my projects, and it's paying off. My boss mentioned that I'm being considered for a promotion, which would mean a significant pay raise. If it comes through, I'll be in a much better position financially, which is a relief. Looking ahead, I'm cautiously optimistic. I know there will likely be more fallout from this situation. My dad's threats still worry me, and I'm sad about the loss of any potential relationship with my mom. But I also feel like I've turned a corner. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first, setting boundaries, and not letting my parents' drama dictate my life.